abilities and the possibilities that came with that part. His friend and activist partner, Dana Rocklin, told me that Mike understood that his greatest role was not Omar Little or Chalky White, but being a community member and doing the work, partnering with and mattering in young people's lives. And he grabbed it with both hands. In the week before his passing, he was in a really good place. Optimistic, positive, energized. He was reminiscing to me about his old theater days and talking about his community work with that insatiable energy that was uniquely him. Mike was open to the world in a way few are. As we age, we tend to close off for protection, but Mike did the opposite. He wanted people to see in, and because of that, he was open to other forces getting in as well. It was like he didn't have a layer of protective skin. It was a blessing and, sometimes, a curse. When I think of Mike, I think of that line from Terence, the Roman playwright. I am human, and I think nothing human is alien to me. That was Mike. Nothing was foreign to him, whether it was what was in people's hearts, their needs, their dreams, or their fears. Wherever he went, and whatever he was doing, he was tapped into the human experience. He took it all in and put all of himself back out. That's why it's so hard to let him go. He remains where he chose to be, in all of us. John Sternfeld, New York, November 2021. Introduction. We cannot make good decisions from a distance. If you are not proximate, you cannot change the world. Bryan Stevenson. Way before I was anything or anyone, I was an addict. That was my identity, what people thought of me, if they thought of me at all. And in my mid-20s, I was on the verge of being discarded, like so many of my brothers and sisters who never got a chance to be something else. But through God's grace, I am still here. Not a day goes by when I don't think how easily it could have gone the other way. So I live my life as testimony to that fact. The closeness of the ledge keeps me sharp. Taking nothing for granted keeps me honest. And letting each tough or tender moment drench me like water, that keeps me, me. I get through it all by feeling it all, taking it all in, and putting it back out there as honestly as possible. I still feel one false move away from losing it all. So I do what I can in the time that I have. When I say I can't forget where I came from, I don't mean that casually, like, yeah, you know, deep down I'm still just a kid from the projects. I mean it literally. I cannot forget. It is impossible for me to remove that Mike from this Mike. We are all the same. The headstrong boy who wanted to dance, the confused teenager who didn't know who or how to love, the dumb punk who got his face cut open trying to prove himself, the scared addict hiding out from people who wanted to help him, the black man who still feared his mother and missed the father. All those versions of me were tucked inside each other like those wooden nesting dolls. There's no line that divides making it from not making it, because it never ends. I still wrestle with demons that won't leave me be. They never go away. They just get quiet enough so I can think straight. I've been blessed to make a career out of doing what I love, but the environment from where I came, the conditions of my youth, the trauma that still lives inside of me, and the struggles that nearly broke me, connect me with so many others. I want to tell my story not because it's unique, but because it is not. We may each be fighting our own fights, but we keep going. That is what ties us together. Everyone who is left here has lived to fight another day. This book is my effort to reach out to those who are the same color as me, and those who couldn't look more different, those who are too young to carry all their pain, and those who are weak from having to carry it for so long. I hope that by telling my story, by sharing my doubts and fears, my loneliness, and some of my trauma, that I can provide comfort, maybe insight or connection, or maybe just the sound of another voice who knows.
For more of these fascinating stories and true crimes, subscribe to Charles Arness World. Thanks for watching.
The fates of the most infamous assassins. The course of history can change in an instant, and often does. Some of the world's most influential figures have had their lives cut short at the height of their influence, with many of their plans left unfilled, sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse. While the fates of these historical figures are well known, what became of their assailants, or attempted assailants? This much is for sure, not all of them were brought to justice. Intrigued? Watch on to find out what happened to history's most infamous assassins. John Wilkes Booth. John Wilkes Booth is one of the most infamous personalities in American history books. Booth ruined a promising career in stage acting for himself when he decided to assassinate Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States. After shooting Lincoln in the back of the head, Booth and his accomplice David Herold went on the run for 12 days, until they were tracked down to a tobacco farm in Virginia. Herold chose to surrender himself to the Union troops, but Booth had to be driven out by setting the barn he was hiding in on fire. When Booth fled the inferno, he was promptly shot. Nathuram Godse. Mahatma Gandhi, known the world over as the epitome of a pacifist, was largely responsible for India gaining independence from England in 1947. While he was generally adored for his principles of tolerance and non-violence, Gandhi still had his enemies. Just 1 year after India won its independence from England, Gandhi was shot 3 times in the torso on his way to a prayer meeting by Nathuram Godse, apparently due to Godse's anti-Muslim sentiment and his anger towards Gandhi's teachings of acceptance. Gandhi himself was a Sanatani Hindu. Against the wishes of Gandhi's sons, who claimed their father would never support capital punishment, Godse was hung in 1949. Mark David Chapman. John Lennon's assassin, Mark David Chapman, killed not only one of the most influential musicians of modern history, but also a classic novel in the process. After shooting Lennon from close range in front of his New York apartment, Chapman sat on the sidewalk and opened a copy of The Catcher in the Rye. Chapman was denied probation 11 times as of 2020, and will likely die in prison. At the time of his arrest, Chapman claimed he took Lennon's life because the musician failed to lead a life of God. More recently, he stated his motives were more fueled by jealousy than righteousness. Charles Guiteau. Just 4 months after being inaugurated as the 20th President of the United States, James Garfield was exiting a train in Baltimore, Maryland, where Charles Guiteau, a lawyer and hardline Republican, was waiting for the president, and shot Garfield twice in the back. Guiteau was long thought by his family to be insane, and after his hanging his brain was preserved for scientific analysis. Examiners found signs of syphilis in Guiteau, which, in the 19th century, was widely believed to cause insanity. Later psychological examinations have shown that he suffered from schizophrenia. The remains of his brain are on display in the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia. Edward Oxford. Queen Victoria suffered no less than 8 attempts on her life during her reign. Not one of these attempts was successful, and she died of natural causes at the ripe age of 81. The first of these attempts, in 1840, was the work of Edward Oxford. While no one was harmed in the shooting, least of all the Queen, Oxford was nonetheless arrested and charged with treason. A jury found him not guilty by reason of insanity, and he was institutionalized for more than a decade until he was exiled to Australia, where he lived quietly until his death in 1900. Lynette Squeaky Fromme. Gerald Ford, 38th President of the United States, came close to death in Sacramento, California, in 1975, when 24-year-old Lynette Squeaky Page, a devotee of Charles Manson, brandished a pistol during one of his public appearances. Secret Service agents detained her before she could fire, but she was nonetheless sentenced to life in prison. 12 years later, from caught wind of Manson being sick, and successfully broke